Okay, hi everybody. This is September the 9th, 2013, and we are continuing with Techniques of Integration webinar commentaries. Number 5, we're in Esoteric Psychology 2, page 352, and we have just completed the discussion, the analysis, the interpretation of the first ray formula for integration. The love of power must dominate, and so forth. And we have discussed that in a rather longer program, longer than 1 hour, by about a half. But I wanted to keep right on the subject without breaking it, actually. So, we move on. Such is the pattern of thought and the process of the life of the man upon the first ray. And, notice that he is speaking of the first ray soul, who is seeking, first of all, to control his personality and then to dominate his environment. And if the control of the personality has come first, then we would say domination of the environment will occur in the right manner, spiritually correct. His progress is that of achieved control. You rather think of the star Regulus, regulation, in that first ray sign Leo, first ray, fifth ray sign Leo. His progress is that of achieved control, that of being controlled, and then again controlling. Well, being controlled by his own higher nature, and then controlling his lower nature and environment. So this is the manner in which the first ray is related to law, and law to setting certain boundaries, certain rings pass not around the lower forces. At first, his motive is that of selfish, separative achievement. The love of power must dominate. There must also be repudiation of those forms which wield no power, and this can be, of course, for selfish reasons at first, for his own advancement, his own aggrandizement. But then a higher achievement takes place. Well, at first, his motive is that of selfish, separative achievement, and then comes failure to be satisfied. And often, this is during the fifth petal process. During the fifth petal process, when we discover, as it is said in psychology, the king is sick. The lower ego is dissatisfied. The lower ego can find no future reason for continuing in the manner pursued heretofore. So the failure to be satisfied, this fifth petal is a momentous turning point. It's a real pivot point at which time the solar angel becomes more attentive and becomes a downward-gazing soul, more attentive to the development of the personality. Once the first reversal of the wheel takes place, or the initial impulses towards that reversal. At first, his motive is that of selfish, separative achievement, and then comes the failure to be satisfied, because there is never, how can we put this? There is never enough power in selfish, separative achievement to satisfy the first ray type. The real power comes from affiliation. When you look at the chessboard, you see that the figure, the chess figure, is really a lower type of figure, it really has the power only to move in certain directions, and it needs the reinforcement of all of its men, all of its court, really, to be successful. Okay, so a higher achievement then takes place as a result of the service of the plan, we say the grasping of a larger whole, and a de-emphasis upon the importance of the central sensitive personality, until the time eventually comes when the first ray man, the first ray soul, can be trusted to be God's destroying angel, the angel who brings life through the destruction of form. Form is not life, of course, not life as we understand it. It is a reflection of life. The inner being has been hampered by the constraints of form, and these forms must be destroyed for the liberation of the being. Constraints. Such integrated personalities, are these the integrated personalities who are God's destroying angels? Are these God's destroying angels? Or are they the first step on the way to become such angels? So such integrated personalities are frequently ruthless at first. They have no regret. I think that's what it means to be ruthless. Ruthless at first, selfish, ambitious, self-centered, cruel, one-pointed, implacable, cannot be appeased or rendered peaceful, will be unrelenting, undeviating, aware of implications, yes, of significances, and of the results of action, but at the same time unalterable and undeviating, moving forward towards their purpose. They have no ruth, they have no regret. They are insensitive to the suffering of others. Their only goal, the achievement of their objective. And no matter what. So let's repeat that. They are integrated personalities at a certain stage of development, not yet really sensitive to the soul aspect, inasmuch as the soul aspect is the love aspect. They are frequently, maybe not always apparently, ruthless at first, selfish, concerned about their own welfare, the welfare of the important center which the lower ego becomes within the field of consciousness, ambitious, seeking to rise, self-centered, looking largely upon themselves and not upon the effects of their actions on others, cruel, that is, disrespecting the desires and wishes and structure of others, one-pointed, not to be deviated, implacable, not to be brought to a condition of relent or peace, undeviating, aware of the implications of their actions, what will result, but apparently not caring, aware of significances and of the results of action, but at the same time unalterable, not to be changed in their forward moving attack upon all that stands in the way of their objectives, undeviating and moving forward towards their purposes. This is the, we recognize this. This is the motion of what's called progress onwards, or onward, progress onward. First ray motion, driving forward through space. They destroy and tear down in order to rise to greater heights upon the ruin they have wrought. Well, and this this can be selfish, and later raising others and the general environment to greater heights. And thus do they rise at first. ENVIR. Yeah. ENV. Okay. Thus do they rise. They trample on other men and upon the destinies of the little person. And we have only to look at the world today and how many little people are caught in the crossfire of these wars between those who have different ideologies, these wars led by first-ray individuals with much sixth-ray, it appears, and the little person in the way of the onslaught has no recourse except to flee or be destroyed. Thus do they rise, they trample on other men and upon the destinies of the little person. I remember there is a place where DK discusses how it has been over the ages and how the plan has been delayed by first-ray types. He even, strangely, he mentions Akbar and other exemplars of the first ray. Let's see, ACBAR, Akbar, maybe, yes, here we go. This is in the externalization of the hierarchy, and of course the then Akbar is now his friend and a superior consultant, the Master Moria. But take a look at what he says here. Political regimes and religious forms have played their part, have persisted or disappeared. The sorry history of humanity has been one of kings and potentates, rulers and warriors, presidents and dictators rising into power at the expense of their own or other nations. Conquerors come and go: Akbar, Genghis Khan, the pharaohs, Alexander the Great, Caesar, Charlemagne, William the Conqueror, Napoleon, Hitler, and Mussolini. These have all upset the rhythm of their times and have come into power through aggression and slaughter. As the nations grew more closely interrelated, their influence on their field of expression increased. The growing means of communication brought this about. Great Britain knew nothing of the movements of Alexander. The peoples of America knew naught about Genghis Khan, but the sound of the marching armies of Napoleon was heard over a far wider area, and the triumphs of Hitler, diplomatic and military, are known throughout the world. So, we see what DK means here. And he's even included some great leaders who, in other ways, have brought much to humanity. The totalitarian powers have turned the world into one armed camp for offense or defense. Motivating all these conquerors was lust for gold, lust for land, lust for power, lust for personal triumph. The modern dictators are no exception, and they bring nothing new. So this, I think, is kind of a second-ray perspective on the first-ray habit of trampling underfoot the little people and all who remain in their way, upsetting the rhythms of their times. unalterable, undeviating, moving forward towards their purposes. Notice that he calls them integrated personalities. He doesn't call them first-rate personalities, not here. But presumably, one who is upon the first ray in the soul nature can have any kind of personality and basically be considered the first-ray type. So, one who is upon the first ray in the soul can have any kind of personality and still be considered the first ray type. They destroy and tear down in order to rise to greater heights. Upon the ruin they have wrought, they do thus rise. They trample underfoot. They trample on other men and upon the destinies of the little person. They integrate their surroundings into an instrument of their will and move relentlessly forward on their own occasions. Now, they can also integrate their surroundings later. They can also integrate their surroundings for the sake of the greater will. And there are some who do this. DK actually did praise, was it Ataturk of Turkey, and talked about how selflessly and how disinterestedly he had used the first-ray power. This type of man will be found expressing these qualities in all walks of life and spheres of action, not only in the military sphere, and is the destroying force in his home, business, or in the nation. So much depends. Whoops. I think we have to go back here. All right, let's see. So much depends on the motive, whether personal or supra-personal. One can still be a destroying force and have a supra-personal motive. And then one really is God's destroying angels, one of God's destroying angels. But he's told us that the period for such destruction is well nigh past, and the more constructive aspect of the first ray has now to be brought into expression. All this is made possible because the first ray has, at this stage, integrated the personality. Notice how that is said. And this first ray force is expressed through the personality vehicles. See, so no matter what these personality vehicles may be, it is the first ray soul force which is expressed through the personality and as a personality, not at first as a soul. So the first ray, as I say, is appropriated by the personality and expressed in a personal way. The first ray soul force is expressed in a personal way through the personality, and not as the soul would express when the personality is wiser in its appropriation of soul energy. So the first ray has at this stage integrated the personality vehicles, and notice that it's the first ray of the soul that integrates the vehicles. It is behind this integration. Is the technique of integration really being applied in this? Well, not some of the higher aspects of this technique. Maybe some of the expressions of energy force that are found in the earlier parts of the stanzas, and has achieved their simultaneous control. The man functions as a whole, and this is another definition, let's say, of an integrated Integrated personality. I think that would be a good one to have. INTGP. Integrated personality. Okay, integrated personality. Right. So, all this is made possible because the first ray, expressing through the soul, in this case, has at this stage integrated the personality vehicles. We might say, in a certain sense, that the achievement of every integrated personality really is the achievement of the soul, or when there appears an integrated personality, the soul has been working behind the scenes to achieve this integration, but the true soul nature is not at first expressed through such an integrated personality. It takes a sensitization of this personality in order for the true soul nature to be expressed. So we can say that although the soul standing behind the personality has, in a sense, integrated the personality, the true soul nature in its fullness is not yet expressing through such a personality. Okay. This process and method of work brings him eventually to a point of crisis. Well, let's just say when one works against union and the forces of union begin to assert themselves from within, then there appears a cross-current of energy we call a crisis. Well, that's one way that the crisis occurs. This process and method of work, trampling on others, it will bring the backlash, brings him eventually to a point of crisis, a crisis based upon the unalterable fact of his essential divine nature or being, which cannot remain satisfied with the gaining of power in a personality sense in the material world. This is so important, the unalterable divine nature of the second ray type cannot remain satisfied with the gaining of love in a personality sense. And the third ray soul cannot remain satisfied with the gaining of knowledge in a strictly personality sense, or beauty in a strictly personality sense, or knowledge in a strictly personality sense, or devotion to personality objectives. They're not wide enough, high enough, or order in a strictly personality sense. Personality is far too limiting a vehicle. For the full expression of the inherent nature, that of the soul. Okay. Power selfishly used exhausts its user and evokes a display of power antagonistic to him. He is thereby destroyed. Well, we look at the Shakespearean dramas and just think of Richard III, the play, where he has connived his way to the top, murdering as he proceeded. And at the end of the play, the forces loyal to those he has destroyed are ranged against him, and he is destroyed. This is a constant theme. It's the theme of the revenge of the good, and how the evildoer is at last attacked by those he has attacked, or those related to those he has destroyed. Power selfishly used exhausts its user. Well, that's a very interesting idea here, because the source of supply of power is the soul, but the soul is unitive, and the selfish one cannot connect with this source of supply. So he has nowhere to turn. Whereas the cup runneth over, the cup of energy and of knowledge and of wisdom and of resupplied energy runneth over for those who are connected to the eternal font. But selfishness, how can we say this? Selfishness cuts off contact with the eternal font. So he is destroyed because he has destroyed. And the old adage, he who lives by the sword shall die by the sword, if not in this life, then in another. And thus it is with karmic retribution. He is separated off from his fellow men, just like the pursued king on the chessboard. Once his fellow chessmen have been eliminated, he's cornered. He has no recourse. He is trapped by superior forces. He is separated off from his fellow men because he has been isolated and separative in his nature, and so we can say, so the natural lines of support have been snapped or cut or torn. There is a gulf. A gulf exists between him and the source of supply. He walks alone at the end because he has cried forth to the world, I will brook no companion. I am the one alone. The word brook, tolerate. I will tolerate no companion. It's a bit like the sixth ray in the healing formula as well. How does it go? The one who sees naught else but perfect functioning and brooks no interference, something of that nature. So I will tolerate no companion. I remain a sort of in a psychopathological state of untouchability. DK talks about that, how the first and fifth ray types may isolate themselves, emphasize their own nature to such an extent that they cannot establish relationship, and they remain essentially untouchable. This word untouchable can be applied in so many different ways. We think of the castes of India, and that's one way of thinking about it. Apparently the magnetism is so low, at least in the old conception, that one would only compromise oneself by touching such, but true reality is also untouchable, untouched and unafraid. And the egotistical individual, isolated in the ramparts of his own selfishness, also becomes untouchable. Nobody can really get through. It was an interesting film, The Silence of the Lambs, and other related films about this monster of a man, Hannibal Lecter, who was a brilliant though evil psychiatrist who essentially was a cannibal, and he was untouchable in every respect, but he somehow allowed a female police officer to touch him. He became somehow sensitive to her, to the point when faced with a choice of being captured or cutting off her hand so he could escape, he cut off his own. I know these are not pleasant things to think about, but eventually that hard outer shell, the ramparts, the barriers, the walls, they will be crushed. They will be penetrated. They will be dissolved in time through the universal process. So a crisis occurs. It's not a crisis occurring through meditation, but a crisis occurs through retaliation, of those who have been brutalized. And this crisis of evocation brings him to an inner point of change, because he is attacked and because his defenses are penetrated, he is forced to feel. This involves an alternation in his direction, a change of method and a different attitude. We might say a kind of reversal of the wheel. Whether this is technically the reversal, whether we can talk about this change of direction as the reversal, possibly. These three changes. So a crisis of evocation brings him to a inner point of change, which involves an alternation in his direction. Okay, that's one. A change of method, that's two. And a different attitude altogether. We do, after all, live in a second-ray solar system, and even in the one about whom naught may be said, in which we live, the Buddhic force is extremely important. And, well, it's hard to talk about process of that great being, but apparently active and maybe emerging. These three changes are described in the old commentary in which these techniques are to be found. So the techniques of integration are found in a certain old commentary, and they're described in the following terms. The one who travels on a line returns upon his way. There is a reversal. Back to the center of his life he goes, because remember, he did press outward into life, and there he waits, right? He waits, instead of taking action, which he could so well take. He reaches out his arms in this gesture of crucifixion, gesture of embrace and crucifixion, of embrace. Where are we? O-R. Of embrace and crucifixion. And cries, which is unusual for him. It's the sixth-ray type that cries out of the solar plexus. So there is now some emotional sensitivity from the solar plexus. I cannot stand and walk alone. In other words, I'm powerless when I do. And standing thus, a cross is formed. And on that cross, he takes his place with others. So he learns a relationship. And this attitude of crucifixion, of embrace and crucifixion, relates him at last to others in the field of love, which he now regains. The one who travels on a line returns upon his way. Back to the center of life, of his life he goes. And, center of his life, back to his heart center. He goes, and there he waits. It's difficult for him to wait rather than to take action on a line, just the way it is difficult for the third-ray type to stop being busy. And there he waits. He reaches out his arms. In other words, and this is this is a broadening gesture, is it not? This is a broadening gesture, and cries, I cannot stand and walk alone. At first he was very content and happy to do exactly that. I cannot stand and walk alone. There's too much in my own nature which stands against this. Too much in my own nature which runs counter to this selfishness. Because after all, at the heart of every being, even every atom in our solar system, is the central fire of Buddhi, which is the fire of loving relationship. So this crisis of evocation, what is evoked? The soul in its love aspect, regardless of ray, is evoked. Brings him to an inner point of change, and every one of the human beings repents and is brought to an inner point of change. Probably be interesting if a number of us could trace our lives back to the point when this redirection took place, the realization that we can no longer go it alone, that we can no longer persist in the limited expression of the ray, which had been our soul ray. It's different in every case, but it always involves a redirection, a reversal, a repentance. And let's put all those words together. Redirection, reversal, repentance. Always those. He reaches out his arms and cries, I cannot stand and walk alone. Remember, at first, stand up, press outward into life, But later, he walks with others, does he not? And we are one in power. How is it said? It said, love takes its place. I move to power, I am the one. We are a unity in power. He is not walking alone, right? At this point. At this point, he no longer walks alone. There's a great sixth ray song in a Rodgers and Hammerstein musical, Carousel, and the heroine of the musical has just lost her husband. He's fallen on his own knife in an attempted robbery, and she's destroyed by this, but an older and wiser relative, a certain Aunt Nettie, as I recall, something like that, sings this wonderful song about you'll never walk alone. It's fantastic. Sixth ray song. And of course it proves to be true by the end of the musical. He returns from heaven. He's been watching over her all this time. So beautiful, really beautiful. So a little further, wherever we are here. All right, and standing thus, with his arms outstretched, the empty nail-marked hands, as they are called elsewhere, perhaps at a later stage, a cross is formed, and on that cross he takes his place with others. Well, he really mounts the, in this case, fixed cross of the soul, where on love is being cultivated, regardless of the ray. So the change of direction takes him back to the center of his being, the heart. A change of method takes place. For instance, instead of moving on a straight line, he waits in patience and seeks to feel. So there is the breaking of old patterns of habit, old types of motion or action. So it really, it requires, this requires going against one's normal tendencies. A change in attitude can be noted, for he reaches out his arms to his fellow men, to the greater whole. And this will, at length lead to the ability to perceive the unity, to isolate the unity, and thus becomes inclusive. And we're going to see that there's a prompting word we call inclusion. And that will appear shortly. So this change of direction takes him back to the center of his being, the heart. And if you think about Leo, for instance, and all of that's going on in this fifth or Leonian petal, Leo does rule the heart. And there's the opening of the heart and the realization of the lack of relationship and of the need for true relationship, and thus the hardened insularity ends, and the new feeding of the man by other energies that can only come through relationship begins to occur. The change of method takes place. So it's direction, method, and attitude. I mean, maybe we can find that and attitude. Maybe we can find that for all the different ray types, that they will change their direction, certainly change their method, and change their attitude. This is all part of the repentance process. You know how it is that the sixth ray preacher will seek to evoke repentance in his flock, that you should turn again to God. We call this a kind of a revival, and be filled with divine life instead of with the desire for all that is earthly and worldly. So it is a common theme also in today's religions. Maybe less, maybe it's somewhat decreasing, but it will have to always be presented to humanity as a necessity, because the attitude of engagement with the three lower worlds, of desire for the fruits of the three lower worlds, will have to change. And instead of seeking to grasp treasures on earth, treasures in heaven, of which the causal body is a great example. There the treasures in heaven are stored. This seeking after heavenly treasures will have to take the place of the earthly treasures. And the Buddha was always also teaching this in his own way, that for those who are desiring existence in the phenomenal worlds, suffering is inevitable. So a change of attitude can be noted, for he reaches out his arms to his fellow men, to the greater whole, and thus becomes inclusive. D.K. Has talked about the first ray type and how to choose them as workers, but don't choose those in whom the love aspect is overly accentuated, because apparently in learning their lesson they might go too far in the other direction. It's always possible that when there is a response to a wrong that one has committed, one will take it very far in the opposite direction. Standing thus in quietness at the center, and his heart in a way forms the center of this cross which he has formed by his embracing attitude towards others, and searching within himself for responsiveness to his environment, because we do remember that before this he has been hardened. He thus loses sight of self. See, for the selfish, selfish personality, the self has been the most important of the items within his contents of consciousness, We are aware of many things. All things we are aware of are really, for us, contents of consciousness, and this central self has been most important for all selfish personalities. And the light breaks in. So this is the third phase, right? Light is the third part of the achlary process. The light breaks in through light appears due to his discovered sensitivity. He searches for this. Well, you know, we're told of the first-ray monadic types, for instance, that they love you must learn, dynamic will you have. That the first-ray monadic types are the most unloving, perhaps in every triangle. The point of the triangle representing the second aspect is the slowest to be vitalized for such types, but eventually, you know, all round themselves out. And although such a first-ray type may never have the same power of love as does the second-ray type, it will appear, just as the second-ray type will never have quite the same power of will as the first-ray type will have. So light breaks in because sensitivity and responsiveness and relationship are discovered within himself. So love and light, through the discovered love comes the light. It is as if a curtain were raised, a curtain which had been preventing the light of relationship from entering. This curtain had prevented the light of relationship from entering. Where there is love, there is light. Where there is enough light, there will be love. In that light, the first thing which is revealed to him is the devastating sight of that which he has destroyed. Around me lies that which I have destroyed. What must I do? Of course, I'm speaking here of the Blessed One as he seeks to return to his source. I'm relating that first-ray stanza to this one. And it's oftentimes that the light reveals the imperfections of our personality and the imperfections of how we have conducted ourselves in the world. In that light, the first thing which is revealed to him, first thing, other things are revealed along the way, is the devastating sight. Devastating to him now, because now he is more sensitive and can suffer because of what he has done. The devastating sight of that which he has destroyed. He is subjected esoterically to what is called the light which shocks. You know, could I have done that? Who? I've done that? Who, me? I'm remembering Lionel Taylor made a marvelous cartoon book of these soul and personality types, and I'm remembering there was this picture of a kind of dinosaur, a Godzilla-like dinosaur, who had just destroyed an entire city or whatever with a flick of his tail, and he's saying, "Did I do that?" Sort of a first-ray, sixth-ray combination. Subjected to that, to what has esoterically been called the light which shocks. So everybody is subjected to the light, but the light, as it appears for the first-ray type, has the element of shock included, because he's been so insensitive, he's been so hardened on the outer level that none of the suffering which he's caused has gotten through to him. But let's just say that the suffering which he has caused now is getting through to him, because the counter blow from his cruelty has worn away, or has cracked, has somewhat destroyed his shell, and the attempt to feel within is dissolving his impervious attitude to his environment. Slowly and laboriously, using every power of his aligned personality. I had a friend who was a first-ray soul and a second-ray personality, and one could see that first-ray just dying to express, but the second-ray, sub-ray was always holding it in check, and there was a deliberate cultivation of kindness in the most willful. The will to love was extremely strong. You could see that first tendency was to attack in the first-ray manner, but it was being corrected in this particular incarnation by the will to love, and one could feel the tremendous restraint of the inner person as this individual attempted to express with deliberate kindness in situations which otherwise might have called for a much different kind of first-ray response. Slowly and laboriously, using every power of his aligned personality and in his realized desperation, realizing the pain he has caused and somewhat feeling this pain, calling in the power of his soul, he proceeds one-pointedly to rebuild that which he has destroyed. This is Vulcan. The first-ray rebuilding planet, also a planet which has much of the building ray, much of the second ray within it on a high level. It's related to the heart of the sun, we are told, and also very much to the mineral kingdom, which is in a way the seventh kingdom from above to below, the first kingdom or the seventh, however you want to call it. At least it relates to the seventh plane and to the mineral kingdom. So we do have often a building complex going on in these first-ray types. Sometimes it goes on simultaneously with the destructive influence. I'm recalling that such a one was Nero. If he was actually on the first ray, it seems that he was, but he had a lot of the fourth ray too, I think. He was a sort of a dramatic actor. And he had they sometimes call it an edifice complex. Edifice, to build, even while destroying in other ways, and getting the money to build by destroying the others. So these things can proceed simultaneously, but anyway, in this particular case, he is desperate for love. Okay, desperate for love and relationship, realizing his insufficiency and his own essential powerlessness without this quality. Calling in the power of his soul, he proceeds, just as one-pointedly as he used to destroy, he proceeds one-pointedly to rebuild that which he has destroyed. In rebuilding, he lifts the entire structure onto a higher level than any he has hitherto touched. So the recompense comes, and the karmic adjustment. And many, perhaps, who have been destroyed before in their personal life, the so-called little people upon whom he has trampled, find at a certain point the possibility of living a more elevated and free life because of the rebuilding of the erstwhile destroyer. This is the task of the destroyers and of those who work with civilizations and who can be trusted to act as agents of destruction under the plan. Well, there is selfish destruction. SLF, soul field. There is selfish destruction and the karmic return, and then there is disinterested destruction in alignment with the plan. Sometimes, in order for the plan to be carried out, there must be destruction, and there is no love of destruction here. There is only a love of the freedom which can come of the destruction. Some people take almost a perverse pleasure in destroying. It gives some kind of personal satisfaction. There is none of that here. And the true warrior who can be trusted as an agent of the plan, it's simply the carrying out of a duty without emotion, in a disinterested manner, to clear the way for a greater expression of the soul and of the spirit. So there is, what can we say here? There is a rebuilding on behalf of the plan, and that is really following, let's say, destruction on behalf of the plan. So whatever is destroyed, something better is put in its place. And even when the destruction is personal, personally wrought, because it has given some advantage, personal advantage to the destroyer, later on there comes a rebuilding which benefits those who have been destroyed through his own personal aims and objectives. It's so interesting to see Akbar listed among the destroyers, or the conquerors, who have upset the rhythm of their times. And here he is now, Master Moria, who is the great agent of the Manu and is lifting the race mightily. Well, we cannot talk about the karma of such a great being. We're not in a position to really understand it, but the general pattern can be understood. That the great destroyers, if they reorient, become the great rebuilders. And when they destroy in the future, they only destroy so that something better can be built. The first ray types on the negative path are called the destroyers of souls. We're not talking about that at all. We're talking about destroying inadequate forms. It is interesting to note that when this stage is reached, the stage of rebuilding, as the first ray man understands it, rebuilding all that he has destroyed, rebuilding for the sake of all that he has destroyed. Around me lies that which I have destroyed, what must I do? It is stated in the first ray Blessed One formula. He will usually pass through 4 incarnations, in which he is first of all the man at the center, a focal point of immobile power. So, what personality ray would that be? Well, it certainly could be, the power of Leo could be very strong here. He is conscious of his power gained whilst functioning as a selfish destroyer. He is king, after all, and he has his kingdom. Has the kingdom he has created through destruction. But he is also conscious of frustration and futility. So this is a fifth petal process. Fifth petal process, and here the king is sick or frustrated, unhappy, dissatisfied. And it's difficult to know what the personality ray could be here. Perhaps the 4th ray, torn. Perhaps a 4th ray personality. 4th ray personality, 4th petal. 4th ray, FR, 4th ray personality, where he is torn. He has achieved a degree of selfish harmony through his destructions, and his kingdom is harmonized. and ruled by him, but something is gnawing, something is nagging at him. Next, he passes through a life in which he begins to reorganize himself. Reorganize, that's the word, for a different type of activity. And it will be found in these cases he will have a third or seventh ray personality. These are the two rays of reorganization, or rays of organization. These two rays are rays of organization. Even the third ray, when it finally functions in a higher manner, is involved with Saturn, with Uranus, and organization. So he's doing something. He is doing something and moving towards rebuilding. I'm reminded here of the Marshall Mannerheim here in Finland. I've learned a little bit about him, but basically the fact that there is a Finland today is pretty much due to him in his leadership in the First World War and in the anti-Bolshevik stance following that war, and in the Second World War. Basically, he preserved this nation. And I think about George Washington, too. I've sometimes thought of him as the first and seventh ray, really somehow preserving the integrity of his nation. In the third incarnation, he definitely begins rebuilding and works through a second ray personality, because, you know, the seventh ray is the ray of the builder, but the second ray is the ray of the form builder, along with the seventh ray, and there is more heart, feeling, and relationship. Some of the great politicians and the great examples of the first ray come to us along the second ray line of their personality, such as, I think, Abraham Lincoln, first ray soul, second ray personality in my view. And in the fourth life, he can function safely through a first ray personality without losing his spiritual balance, if we might use such a phrase. In other words, without a destructive expression of the first ray. Because it is counterbalanced in the following way. Through this type of personality, his first ray soul can demonstrate, because the disciple has, and that's the inner disciple regardless of the ray, the inner man now has these qualities, no matter through what rays or astrological signs he may be functioning. So that's a really important point, because sometimes we say, well, we are what our signs and astrology make us. But no, we are inwardly what we are, and through the signs and rays that have been gathered for us to function through, we express what we inwardly are, thus modifying the normal expression of the rays and signs and planets which have been gathered. So through this type of personality, his first ray soul can demonstrate, because the disciple has, quote, recovered feeling, gained divine emotion, affected by love, and not just desire, right? Affected by love and not just desire, and filled his waiting heart with love. We, after all, do live in this second ray solar system on a second ray planet, a developing second ray on this planet now. In such cases as this, the astral body is usually on the second ray, the mental body upon the fourth ray, and the physical body upon the sixth ray, a great counterbalance to the double first ray. This naturally tends to balance or upset the intensity of the first ray vibrations of the personality and soul. It'd be wonderful if we could see who DK had in mind here. Who was this type of individual? What historical figure was it that demonstrated this? You know, in everything we have right now, all the ray formulas that we can actually trust, none of them have the same personality and soul ray. None of them, not one. Not Alice Bailey, not any of the disciples, not any of the masters, as far as I can see. This naturally tends to balance or upset the intensity of the first ray vibrations of the personality and soul. It is in the third life of reorientation that he gains the reward for arresting of his selfish efforts, and aspects of the plan are revealed to him. The third life of reorientation, if I'm understanding this correctly, this is the one in which the second ray, second ray personality is the means of expression for the first ray soul. That he gains the reward for arresting of his selfish efforts, and aspects of the plan are then revealed to him, through the sensitive second ray. Well, whatever is said here of the first ray type, there's going to be a formula similar for all the ray types. It's not given, however. It would be fascinating if it were given, so more of us might be able to trace the process through which we are passing. But there will be a repentance and a rebuilding or some freeing process, some freeing of oneself from previous tendencies. And it will probably proceed according to a certain formula, which no doubt Master DK has in his mind and has been observed by him, but which is not given to us. I suppose we could work it out. Now, of course, when the second ray type goes through this, it's got to be a freedom from the attraction to form. He's already existed on the building ray, but, well, he has to rebuild according to the Blessed One stanza, build now an ark translucent which can reveal the light, O builder of the ark, and by that light you shall reveal the lighted way. Well, there is a rebuilding phase there as well. Well, we'll come back a little bit to this. I think it's time to move on. We're over the mark here. So this is the end of Techniques of Integration Webinar Commentaries number 5, Esoteric Psychology 2, page 354. 354. And, we're just about at the Ray 2 stanza. And so this is the beginning of Techniques of Integration Webinar Commentary number 6, EP 2, page 354. This is so fascinating, this sequence of 4 personalities when the rebuilding stage is reached. There's not so much rebuilding in the very first incarnation, but at least not so much rebuilding, but at least the man checks his selfish tendencies and does no more harm and has a motivating dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction might be nice. Dissatisfaction. A motivating dissatisfaction. He knows the bloody past, and you sometimes see this in people who have, they know why they have reached the point of power at which they stand, and they try to work in the reversed mode. I'm thinking about some of these great industrialists, certain people who have, let's say during the 19th century, been the so-called robber barons, and then become the great philanthropists later. They grab it for themselves, and then they realize that they cannot be satisfied holding it just for themselves, and they start to release it for others. Of course, that also brings to them a certain gain, a certain recognition, a certain love energy. Acquisition and contribution, right? It's all about that. You grab for yourself, you acquire for yourself, and then you find dissatisfaction in having created this isolated center. There's many different ways of being isolated, and realize that unless you create true relationship through contribution, that there is no lasting happiness in life. So, it'd be so interesting to be able to see the types of incarnations through which various individuals are passing. Some people never reach this stage, of course. They're on the first ray. I think of some of the strong men who have functioned in different countries, and it's pretty much selfish. There's a lot of that going on in the continent of Africa, let's say, where people are rising through a certain stage. I think of how the revolutionary of the past becomes the statesman of the present and future. This is often the way. They take off their battle fatigues and they put on the suit and they act in a different manner. Some people put on the suit and they don't act in a different manner at all. They're just interested in the preservation of this of their own power, and they hold on to it and won't give it away because they're afraid of the repercussion that might occur if they did give the power away, and they like the prerogatives. But there is here, let's call this a crisis of conscience in a way. The realization of the wrong ways in which power was gained, and the suffering that has occurred because of that. And I suppose it's in the second ray incarnation, the one on the second ray personality, where one can really feel what one has done before and is highly motivated to build in a more philanthropic way, because one is sensitive to the destruction which one has wrought. So he searches within himself for responsiveness, and when he has a second ray personality, I think he can really find that. The light breaks in. It is often a second ray revelation that reveals our imperfections. But this doesn't occur all at once. It occurs in varying degrees of intensity over a period of lives. And he is devastated by that which he has destroyed, especially, I would suppose, in a second ray incarnation. Then he is shocked by his imperfections. He is desperate because of the pain he has caused, because he feels it. And he rebuilds, seeks to rebuild. Now, it looks like the real rebuilding in earnest is taking place in the third incarnation. In the second incarnation, he reorganizes himself and at least changes his orientation, so that he is certainly working along the side of construction, but maybe he's not building as much as he could using the power of love. The access to the power of love would seem to come more in the third incarnation. And it is in this third incarnation let's see, fourth life, yeah. Well, he has, apparently in the previous cycle, he has regained. I would say he has, and I would say in the third incarnation, recovered feeling, gained divine emotion, which is not the emotion which arises because desire is satisfied or frustrated, but it's an emotion which finds its happiness in the expression of something greater, something less personal, and filled his waiting heart with love. I would say, with the second ray personality, this is possible. So that by the time the first ray personality occurs in the fourth incarnation, he will be ready with the love energy to offset the intensity of the double first ray. In this case, the astral body is usually on the second ray, calmness of emotion, mental body on the fourth ray, an understanding of the relationship between the past and the future that must be, and the ability to harmonize otherwise dissonant situations, and the physical body upon the sixth ray. This is interesting. He's not telling us what it actually gives, but let's just say that idealism can find a grounding in the physical body. And the state of the love of the emotional body, on the sixth plane, how about that? Plane can come through into physical demonstration. And this naturally tends to balance or upset the tremendous intensity of the first ray vibrations of the personality and soul. So this third life of reorientation is the most sensitive up to this point. And it needs to be a very sensitive incarnation if one is to be able to support the very powerful and interesting apportioning of rays in the fourth incarnation. It is in the third life of reorientation that he gains the rewards for arresting the selfish efforts. And when did he do that? Arrested the selfish efforts probably in the first of these four incarnations. At least he did no harm. He may have consolidated his power, but he did not further destroy others to gain for his own power, and he suffered the frustration of being torn in two directions, or the frustration of the guilty conscience. So there he gains reward for the arresting of his selfish efforts, and aspects of the plan are then revealed to him. Love and revelation go together, and in the third of these incarnations he is regaining the love. I'm kind of finishing up with the first ray here, even though I'm rather over my time, because I can see that the second ray stanza lies immediately ahead, and I would rather not mix these together. So I'm just looking here to see what can be gleaned, what might further be said that has not been said. Yes, I become really interested in what the sequence of possible incarnations could be for those upon the different soul rays. And I think a hint is being given that they do exist, but it seems to be left to us to figure out how to calculate the succeeding incarnations. I mean, the second ray type might find himself entirely immersed in attachment to form, very much having to find a degree of freedom. I think certainly in the second ray sequence that would liberate from attachment to form, some sort of seventh or third ray, some hardline rays would have to enter in. And the analogy, of course, would be that in a way in the third of a sequence, let us say of 4 lives, the first ray personality would be found such that in the 4th life, if there was, I'm just speculating here, a second ray personality could be found along with the second ray soul, because the mind and the body at least would be on hardline rays, such as the first ray mind, and who knows, maybe even a first ray physical body. There are second ray souls who can have a first ray. How does it go? Does any second ray soul have a first ray physical body? Well, maybe not in the not in the groups that we have seen, but they do have seventh or third ray physical bodies. I'm reminded of two disciples. They have the same ray structure, basically. 2, 1, 2, 1, and then 3. 2, 1, 2, 1, 3, I think, for both of them. Well, anyway, there would have to be a detaching quality, which in order for the second ray soul to return to its proper spiritual center. And for the third ray type, an antidotal ray would be the seventh ray, and the calmness of the second ray. Those would be important rays to help the third ray type release himself from his tangle of energies. And the fourth ray type would need the ordering of the seventh ray again, in this rhythmic stability to reduce the conflict, and would need the tranquility of the second ray, and would need the steadfast focus of the first ray, the fourth ray soul, because steadfastness is a word of power for the fourth ray soul, and steadfastness seems like the fourth ray usual mode of behavior is anything but steadfast. The fifth ray type, returning, would need a lot of the soft line energies to get rid of the aridity and the kind of absorption in form. He would need the abstract rays. Maybe the sixth ray would be important for its abstract idealism, and certainly the second ray to help discover the mystery behind the mysteries. Every ray can antidote another in a certain respect. The sixth ray type, well, obviously needs order and regulation and restraint. The first ray could be harmful if applied to the sixth ray soul too early. The fourth ray might be important for the sixth ray type, because instead of this passionate single-mindedness, we might have at least the ability to look on two sides of the question and not be so self-assured. And the third ray, administered at a certain point, would introduce a degree of realization of the complexity of the situation, rather than be so simple-mindedly single-minded. But I don't know the sequence or the order of these. Of course, I wonder if there ever comes a time when such a soul as the sixth ray soul can function with a sixth ray personality, and how would that be counterbalanced or offset by what kinds of rays? So we don't know whether there's an exact parallelism in all these cases. With the seventh ray soul, who had become very immersed in material rhythms and sort of the instinctual cycles of nature, there would be kind of a slavery to certain routines. The first ray could help it break out, that's for sure. The Uranian application of the first ray, and there could be the third ray could be useful as an antidote to the third, because the third ray is so adaptable. It will give many, many possibilities where the seventh ray thinks only of the next step in a particular pattern sequence. So that has to be broken. And maybe some of the, how do you dissolve your routines? Maybe again the second ray can be something of an antidote, and the spontaneity of the fourth ray. So let's just say that different personality rays can antidote the earlier tendencies of the soul ray when this soul ray was being used by the personality in such a way that imprisoned the personality in form. And we are always interested in the spiritualization of the personality and the ability for the soul to express in a way that is not harmful but is according to the divine plan. Well, rays are like medicines, and you give them in certain instances, helping to break a pattern which has outlived its usefulness. Oh, well, that's of great interest to me, I must say, because it's just speculative, of course. But one day when we can study incarnations in sequence and really see the rheology and astrology of those lives, we can see how the soul, with the help of the solar angel, angel of the presence, has somehow chosen personality rays which are suitable for the gradual spiritualization of the man. And if there is perhaps a particular sequence in which that spiritualization occurs. I mean, Master DK obviously is in a position to study great people and people that he knows, and he's seen a certain pattern here from some ray indicating centralization, but a guilty conscience, let us say, maybe it's the fourth ray, to a second incarnation in which the third or seventh ray becomes the personality ray of the first ray type, to an incarnation in which the second ray becomes the personality ray. And finally, maybe there are those he has studied who have the first ray personality as well as the first ray soul. And he will know all the rays, and he will understand how they worked out in the various lives. So right now we can apply the rays to a study of a particular incarnation, but how fascinating it would be to apply the rays to a study of a sequence of, let us say, 5 or 4 incarnations when the individual was extricating himself from the negative or more material or more personal expressions of the ray. Okay, well, I continued there. So this will be, I said it earlier, didn't I? It's the end of Esoteric Psychology 2. Esoteric Psychology 2, page 354. Techniques of Integration, webinar commentaries, number 5. We'll begin with number 6. And we might say that maybe this would be a good point at which to do the Great Invocation, since some of these programs now appear to be an hour and a half. Maybe they will not persist in this manner, but an hour and a half seems like a nice rounded point, so let's do that. And we use the note G as the starting point. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men, let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men, may Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Okay, friends, so we will continue with the Ray 2 formula. This will, well, most of the occult groups presently are formed of souls, either on the first ray or the second ray. So whereas what we have said here applies to perhaps many in the esoteric groups, there were 8 first ray souls, I think, out of about 50 students or disciples of Master DK, and the rest were the majority of the second ray, with a couple on the seventh ray and a couple on the third ray, with a couple of sixth ray souls who were essentially second ray souls and working in transition. So what we have to say here on the first two of these integration techniques will be the most applicable, but we can always learn about the others, because we will be working with people on other soul rays, and perhaps we'll be working in a psychological way with them, so it will be well for us to know. Okay, that will be it, and we'll go on to number 6 fairly shortly. Okay, see you then. Bye-bye.